looking back, I'm like, oh my word, how bizarre. Of course, one more silly thing. But he did, like, he had his whole arm through my cervix and was grabbing her finger when she was checking me. And I was only dilated to a 5. So she said, she goes, this doesn't happen very often. I've done a whole lot of births. And she goes, this is the 3rd time I've ever had this happen. So Ned came on December 3rd. Via C-section, kind of out of nowhere, because he decided to Superman. That was just really funny. So it's my
Goodness.
second C-section after 3 VBACs.
Hello and welcome to Healing Trauma Mamas. I'm your host, Midon Wingo. Thank you for joining us as we share in our stories and experiences of healing from childhood traumas and birth traumas. Listen as we discuss our struggles, our failures, our strengths and our victories, and all those lessons we've learned along the way. Why, hello, Healing Trauma Mamas. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so glad you decided to join us today, and I'm super excited about my guest that I'm getting to talk with today because I feel like I go through these really long stints of not getting to talk to this beautiful, amazing mama. And then we get a chance to catch up. And it's like, oh my goodness, why did we wait so long to get to catch up? I guess because life, we both have a passel of children. And so there's lots of things happening. But you guys may be familiar with this guest. She actually was our second guest on the podcast ever. She was very helpful in starting Healing Trauma Mamas. And she's been just a beautiful soul to get to talk to. And I just really want to welcome Allie back onto the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
So I would encourage you, if you don't remember Allie's story, to go back and listen to episode 2. We were very new in the podcast then. We were just figuring it out. In fact, Allie was a conversation her and I had over the phone actually made me realize my daughter, who had been encouraging me to have a podcast, she had kept telling me, you're going to have a podcast and this is, kind of what it's going to be and all of this. And I kept saying, no, no, no. And then one day, Allie and I are on the phone and we're just talking away about all these different things related to motherhood and birth and all this stuff. And I just paused in the middle of our conversation. I was like, oh, Allie, this is what she's talking about. This conversation needs to be recorded so that we can share it, because I just felt like the things that we were talking about were so valuable. And so we did. We decided to jump in and do the podcast, and we recorded, and you came and shared your amazing story. I think the title, those listening, if you want to go back and look, is episode 2. The title is Jesus, Give Me My Baby. So if that doesn't tell you a little bit about that podcast episode. So Allie got to share about her birth and some things that had happened, that a lot of traumas that were brought up in that birth in regard to obstetrical traumas specifically, and how that affected her home birth in a RV with all of her kiddos, and how awesome water birth.
Crazy, crazy.
And yeah, it was pretty amazing to think back. So yeah, any recap you want to do with all of that?
Wow. I haven't even. Oh goodness, no. That was my 5th birth, wasn't it? Yes, I have 7 children, but one's adopted, so it's my 5th um, birth, and it was miraculous. Every time I think back on that birth, and any time I get to share Elsie, she's about to be 5, like, in a few weeks. Is that not crazy?
It's
5.
wild.
That's
Wow.
wild. I know.
Wow.
I can't believe it. But yeah, I mean, it was just such a growing experience for me, and I think a point in my life when I realized, like, just because something is hard, how it's handled and how who you have around you can just help and make a difference, and the Lord can do anything. Like, not that he, like, that he wouldn't have been in that birth if we would have had to go to the hospital. And I mean, I've had a C-section since, like, but it was just such a gift that we were kind of at a cusp where I we she needed to come or we needed to go. And I did not think that that was going to be able to happen because I was in transition and didn't realize it. Anyways, because no one realizes, I don't think, that they're in transition until after it happens. And the Lord just gave her to me. I said, God, like, you've got to either make it stop or you've got to give me my baby. And His grace, and He did. And she came, flew out of there, and we didn't have to go anywhere. It was such a blessing. And Midon was
Mhm.
there, and it was such a gift, such a
It
gift.
it was for all of us.
Yeah,
I feel like it was
I'm
just
so
such
glad.
a beautiful time, like, yeah, definitely fond
Mhm,
memories of that
mhm.
and getting to help be part of your care, which was just
It was
excellent, and
wonderful.
then the beautiful friendship that the Lord gave us afterwards and all these things. Because
Agreed.
during that time, I had already been thinking about trauma and how it affects birth and
Mhm.
how we cannot even be aware that our body is holding on to things until we get into these
Yeah,
situations, and then it starts coming out, and I know that was some of the things for you that happened in that birth. It was very unexpected. Some of the things that
yeah.
came out, I remember, like, one of the things that you repeated, and please, I do encourage the listeners, go back and listen to
Mm,
episode 2, and Allie
mhm.
really talks about all of it, but one of those where she just kept saying that, "Nobody's cutting me today. Ain't nobody cutting me today." And she was
I was so worried.
really, like, so, like, and she had a moment where she couldn't even recognize that we were there to help her and that we loved her and we
Mhm,
were taking care of her, and it was just her
mhm.
body just remembering the trauma that she had gone through the time before, and it really came out in
Mhm.
this pregnancy, and there was so much redemption that happened with that birth, and
Yeah.
it was just so beautiful, and I'm just yeah, I'm very, very
Mhm.
thankful. But I
Such
know
a gift.
so much has happened since that time. So when you came on the podcast before, you were
Yes.
you were just starting to be a doula. You live in
Mhm,
New Mexico at the time, and you were starting to become a doula, and you were really getting into birth work, and you were considering becoming a midwife. I can't remember if you were starting then or not. And so you're really diving into birth work at the time and your large family
mhm.
that you're taking care of as well. And so much I know has happened since that time.
So much.
Yeah, so
So
why don't
much.
you catch us up just a little bit? So you did become a
Yeah.
doula, and you were a
Yes.
doula for a while?
Yeah, and I technically still am. I will take
Yeah.
clients. If I ever get a chance, I definitely do. It was such a gift and a blessing. I used to really look at, and I know I talk about this in the first thing a little bit, so I won't go in detail, but had a lot of different kinds of births, and it used to really bug me. That I would have a friend who was 20 and knew exactly how she wanted to do things and would do it that way, and it worked out for all of her children, and that was glorious. And I was like, it took me 5 kids to figure out how I like to do this and to understand what I want and my mind and how to advocate for myself, things like that. And it used to really
Mm,
bug me, and I learned that it was such a gift because then I can be whenever I help a mom as their doula or even just as their friend, being able to say, "Well, I've done a lot of different things, and a lot of them have everything has pros and cons, and let's talk about this." And being able to have that perspective has been a gift. So
yeah,
been a blessing to be able to look at it that way. Oopsie.
that's so
Um,
great.
yeah, to be able to look at that way has been really, really great. And so, yeah, I was a doula. And like I said, technically still am. And I did, and lactation support, educating all that. While we were in New Mexico, I was given the opportunity to be a student midwife. And that's happened since then. And I was able to do that for several months. And I loved it. I love it so much. Oh, midwifery and helping moms, but also the technical side of that and there's a little more pressure, on that side. You have to not pressure in a negative way, but I do well under those kinds of, we've got to you know, um, keep things safe and it being able to react quickly and handle things and make everything the way it needs to be. And I love that aspect of it, of helping through those sorts of things, and I don't know if that makes sense. Um, but my husband got sick, um, and I am from Oklahoma, And we were there. My husband was in the oil field and he pastored a little church there. And but he got sick and we were in the middle of nowhere. Without family around, it's really hard to be going to the hospital and things like that all the time. And him being, you know, with no family and stuff. So we made the decision to move back to Oklahoma. And unfortunately, it is not very affordable to become a midwife in Oklahoma. And we're just not in a season where we could do all that right now. So I it's on pause. I am not convinced that it won't happen in the future, but that happened.
You have
So
plenty
kind
of
of a
time.
big shift. Oh, I have so much time. I can just,
Yeah.
we can, yeah. So we're it's just not the season for us. And so I do have moments where it just breaks my heart or I get miss it and get sad and, uh, but it's okay. But we came back here and I'm trying to think, I guess after we had Elsie, we came back here. Elsie turned about a year old. In that transition, we had at that point, we had 6 children, and we said, "I feel like we're not completely done, but we don't wanna have a big gap, like, let's do this." But we did I had we decided we were going to have another baby, and so I, like, stopped nursing at a year. We were like, "We're just doing it right now. We're gonna make them really close together, like we're in charge and in control of everything," and we had several miscarriages, and it was really bizarre for us. It felt bizarre and crazy. I think we lost 4 babies, early miscarriages after Elsie. It was really a crazy kind of learning experience for us and trying to figure that out. So I guess that's the not that I forgot about that,
Those
but,
are
um,
those are
that was a
really
crazy
hard
time.
too. I know.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
were
And
really
I
hard.
know, like, especially when you're like, "Okay, we've decided to do this thing and we're going to do it now, and this looks like perfect, beautiful timing for us." And then, you know, I've experienced loss as well, and I know, like, many moms listening, I think the statistics now are 1 in 3 will experience a first trimester loss. So, it can be a very trying time. And you have these sweet little ones and you get such a short time, a very unexpected time that you get to be with them. I mean, obviously, when you get pregnant, the expectations and the dreams start coming right away about that child,
Mhm,
and you're already, like, picturing you holding them and 5-year-old and 10-year-old, and you're just like you can see, like, all these things, and then when
mhm.
you don't get that time with that little one, that is so heartbreaking, and to
Oh,
have
yeah.
4 back to back,
Yes,
that's a
and
really rough time.
we'd had very little trouble before. We had one, early miscarriage after our 3rd after our 2nd. It was but I could logically go, "Okay." I'd had, like, an IUD at the time, just a phase of my life where, and I had an IUD and I got pregnant very quickly after, and so it made sense to me that, like, it would be hard for your the lining of your uterus just isn't as thick and that sort of thing right after getting, an IUD taken out, and so, it, like, was logical to me. Like, it was sad and it was horrible, and still, I miss that baby and grieve that baby, but it made sense. This one, it was like, we've had all these kids. We've had no issues. A lot of, I ask, doctor or whatever, like, what's going on? And one of the things that I was told a lot was like, well, the number one reason that people lose babies at the beginning is because of like genetic issues. They're like, but you two have had all these babies. Like, why? I don't know. Like, even we'd have a doctor and a couple doctors say that kind of thing. Like, but I don't understand why you would be having that problem considering you guys have had no problems. Come to find out, something that I was like, oh, I, and I feel like I knew this because I was a student midwife. Um, a lot of time one of the main a lot of times as we get older, um, it can be because of daddy's testosterone levels a lot of times can make it to where, we are there so you know this, and I'll be brief in my little thing, but I just think this is crazy and should be common information that I didn't know, and so I'm gonna share anyways, but, our whenever an egg is fertilized, there's typically some sort of sperm fragmentation. Like, it just happens frequently, and our eggs, like, repair that. Like, our bodies work together and repair that, like, most of the time, which is awesome that the Lord has, like, put that in our biology to fix those things. But whenever
Mhm.
testosterone levels are really low or low in general, sometimes the fragmentation is just too intense, and it's makes it more difficult for that repair to happen. And so my husband, like, in a completely separate thing, not even thinking about fertility, had because he was having these health issues, had his blood work done, and they were like, "Oh, you're low on testosterone. We wanna supplement that." And all of a sudden, we got pregnant
Mm.
out of nowhere and had no issues. So we have baby number 7. His name is Ned. Ned just turned a year old, actually, which is so crazy. Oh, and he's gonna fuss in the background.
But he just
I
is making his
will.
presence known since
I
we're
know. He
talking
says,
about him.
"Actually, you're talking about me." Baba, I'm sorry. Hold on. Hi. Anyways, so Ned is he's been such a blessing, and we are so gifted to have him. But so yeah, I'm trying to think. So we had all that
So how did
happen,
that
and then
birth?
Ned is
Yeah, like,
born.
so you got pregnant and
Yes, I did. It's so funny. His birth. So it actually was it wasn't really eventful. I had some blood pressure issues. He's gonna make some noise.
yeah, let's go to the
Um,
pregnancy for a minute because I
let's talk
know
about okay.
that it was not the easiest pregnancy for you, and there was
That's
so many
true.
stressors going on in your life during that time.
Yes.
Yes.
Such a bizarre time. I'm glad that you are I'm like, "Yes, tell me which direction to go," 'cause I get a little ahead of myself. Yeah, so do you want me to focus in on the stressors? The
Yeah,
big
that might
crazy
be
stuff
helpful.
that happened?
Yeah, just to
Yeah,
kinda
I
how
can
you
go on the big
dealt with them.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I had first of all, this is, like, really low stressor, but typically I don't have a lot of symptoms, and I just was not did not feel well. Like, it was harder for me. I'd never had things like morning sickness, normal things, and so I was dealing with those. And then, part of the way through this so during that pregnancy, I was just having normal things like that, and then on top of that, my are you cool with me getting into stuff about my husband and all that? Is that what we're talking
Girl,
about?
you know, there's no rules on this podcast. We
I
discuss
know.
all of
I
it, the
am an open book.
nitty-gritty.
I'm just Yep, well, here it is. So my husband got in a car wreck, and, this actually happened it happened before my pregnancy, the car wreck actually happened. He was in a car wreck, I won't get into all the details, but it was a couple cars, and a motorcycle, and he was, like, there was original car wreck, and then he bumped into them after the motorcycle and the other car had collided, and the lady on the motorcycle didn't make it, and I was really sad, um, and there were 2 adults in the other vehicle who blamed my husband for this. So, very traumatic, crazy thing happened, and he's going, "I didn't do it," but he's the only one there. So, this whole thing happens, working through it, get pregnant, partially through I guess, part of the way through my pregnancy, my husband actually was arrested, and, we were
That's a stressor.
completely shocked. Oh, yeah, just a little. And he has, like not that it matters, but just was very much so out of the blue. This is not typical or something that he had like something we were used to or it out of nowhere. And it had been a long time since the wreck, and so we were just shocked. Big, big, big stressor. Praise God, like, he was able to come home, and he was able to come home, and then at the beginning, um, able to bail him out and all that, and so we had to start this whole legal process while I'm pregnant, with with our 7th child. It's not so there's a lot going on anyways, and then we're dealing with this. So, it was a very stressful pregnancy, to say the least. I can't even I was very stressed out. So I because of those sorts of things, I'm kinda battling some, things like blood pressure issues and, just trying not to get super depressed. I mean, that's an issue in the middle of all that, and keeping myself, like, trying to be healthy and trying to it was a lot. It was a whole lot. I don't even know what else to say about it. It was sometimes there are things that happen that you're just going, I don't even have words for how stressful that was. It was really crazy on top of being super pregnant. It was just not really what I would have expected. And that was towards the beginning of my pregnancy because that was when he got arrested this summer. And then, yes. So it was towards the beginning when that initial arrest happened so that happened and then we had Ned. Everything went okay. We kept kind
How
of
did that
I'm trying to think.
birth go? Like, your original
Yes, the
plan
birth.
obviously, you had a home birth the time before that. You were a VBAC
Yes.
already, and
Mhm.
had that successful. So, I'm
Yeah.
sure your expectations for this birth were probably a little set by that amazing birth that you
Yes.
had.
Yes, and I was, like we talked about earlier, I was a, student midwife. Like I had definitely had opinions about what I wanted and ideal, um, just just knew exactly what I wanted. But whenever we are having to pay an attorney and we're having to deal with all of these things, I am being in a new place. Like we didn't have a lot of connections in the midwife birthing community in general. We ended up at a hospital. I was so blessed though. The Lord provided my OB was actually a woman that I've known since we were small children, like a
Mm,
dear friend of mine, which was just a gift because she was newer. I think she had just started her practice actually. Um, and that was a gift because even though it was not my ideal and not what I had planned, it was somebody I trusted and someone that I knew cared about me. And
mm,
not that I ever encourage anyone to go into a birthing situation or any kind of assuming that your care provider doesn't. But it was just I feel like sometimes I just knew a little too much. Like to, I
mm.
struggle sometimes just to
Yeah.
have that like, well, they've got it. I ask a lot of questions and I want to know everything. And it was just a gift. And even being able to be open about our family situation, like she knew about that already. And being able to know that things were kind of crazy and stressful without judgment was just such a gift. So, my dear
Well,
friend,
that's
was
beautiful.
my yeah, it was a gift, and
Well,
she
and
was my
you likely would have transferred out of midwifery
yeah,
care,
with
blood
my blood
pressure
pressure.
issues. Yeah.
Yes, it was kind of bizarre. I struggled. Well, and in all this, my mom has 10 children. They're not all biological. She has 7 biological children, and I think at her 6th, yep, she started having blood pressure issues. So it was kind
Mm.
of funny, like, just to go and since then, we've actually found out we have a, genetic I don't know if I've even told you this. We have something called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which
Great.
is a connective tissue disorder, and one of the things that can happen is kind of, high blood pressure happens with Ehlers-Danlos a lot, and it's typically kind of not always something where there's an obvious cause, like, where you're going, "I am not eating well, and so I'm having high blood pressure." Like, sometimes it is a little bit more of a mystery, and it's
Mhm.
genetic. So, that has been an interesting thing to learn, throughout this process. So, we would have probably transferred out with free care, you're completely right. My blood pressure stayed not, like, really high, but it was high, and it stayed that way through probably the whole last trimester, and
Mhm.
it was a good thing that I'm grateful that we didn't have to, like, change plans at the very end, or deal
Yeah.
with something like that, because that would have been a whole lot of, that would have been really stressful, and things were already stressful. I
Mhm.
didn't need it to be extra. So then after that, so then my birth, well, and through the end of the pregnancy, it was kind of stressful. We talked about doing, I was able to keep he did never went breech, so that was really cool. I have a history of doing that. I just did some super fun spinning babies type things throughout pregnancy, and he just stayed right how he was supposed to. It was wonderful. We went in. They ended up wanting to induce, just because that's protocol whenever you're having high blood pressure at the end.
But
You
hard
really
for
need.
a VBAC because that's
Yeah,
not necessarily great for a VBAC to induce. That's wanting to have
exactly.
vaginal delivery.
Exactly. It's kind of one of those things where and for me, probably one of the harder things, about traditional hospital care is it's a lot of policies and a lot of, there's a lot of things that providers don't get to decide about. And a lot of things, even understanding and something, and I knew this, but my doctor even told me this. And it was, uh, once again, one of those things where it's sweet to have a friend, your doctor, because sometimes they can tell you things like, you know, when a hospital tells you you're high risk, it's not necessarily high risk to you. It's high risk to the hospital. So they have, just a lot of what's the word? Their liability and things they have to
Yeah.
they it's all numbers and charts, and that's sad because that's not really how birth works. But it's just the reality of the system.
Mhm.
You can't always get that to change how you want it. And so I ended up, they wanted to induce, and I had been induced before. I didn't want to have pain meds, but we felt at peace about those decisions. It was kind of like, okay, like if this is what we have to do, like because of the system that we're kind of stuck in here, like, okay. And it went really well. I mean, the birth was okay. At the beginning, things were really, I was in a zone. We were, I mean, I was definitely able to just kind of, I can't think of a good word besides groove, and I don't like that. That sounds really cringy, but I was able just to kind of float through and just breathe and
Yeah.
rock and
Just
just
work
do the
through it
whole
really
thing.
well.
Work
Yeah.
through it really well in a calm way. Like I wasn't panicking, but we got to a point. I don't even think they checked me in a really like maybe at all or in a really long time. And I was, and I was feeling things ramping up, like, pretty significantly where I'm like, "Okay, like, here we go. This is different." But then it kind of stopped, and I never experienced it like this. I mean, if you go back and listen to Elsie's birth, I have experienced stop, back and forth. But this was different because it was, like, the real deal, like, where I was going, "I am feeling like this is transition," and then it was like, "Hold on, I'm gonna sit down a second." Like, it just kind of the labor did that. Like, it just said, like, "We're
Mhm.
gonna hold off," and it was really weird, and I called the nurse in, I was like, "I think I want you to check me. Like, this is weird. This isn't what I was expecting." And, first of all, I have a sensitive cervix, in case you wanted to know, and, so that was real fun. I don't Madon knows. I feel so bad. Everybody that has to deal with me and my cervix, because I have a very high pain tolerance, and I can't. I'm like, don't. It's so bad for me. My poor daughter. That's the other thing about this birth that was special, but also my oldest daughter, Betty, who's about to be 15. Gross. Cannot believe it. Can you believe that?
These
I
kiddos,
know.
they just keep growing like
I know.
crazy.
I know. And you think about it then when we met, she was 10. She was 10 at Elsie's birth. So
Wow.
that's so crazy. But she came and, she was at the hospital with us, and then they go to check me, and I'm like, crawling
Losing
up
it.
the walls,
Mhm.
and we definitely had to have a conversation later about, like, "Listen, this is not typically how this goes." Like, sometimes it can, but I'm just
You
so
also
sorry.
have trauma from your cervix. So,
Exactly, and I
scar
was
tissue
like
on your cervix.
all of those things, and so I was having to explain that to her, like, "You don't need to be like, I am never having children," because my mom, they just it's like, "Trust me, this isn't, like, just normal, like, everybody has this problem." And
Mhm.
so, anyways, they went to check me, and the nurse's eyes got huge and said, "I need to go get the doctor." And I said, "What's going on?" And she goes, "I feel a hand." And the thing that was so bizarre is that I had really been one of the things so I had been to a birth. I remember driving around with my preceptor midwife, asking her about dysplasias. Did I say that correctly? I said that funny. Anyways,
You mean
but,
dystocias?
like, dyssocia did I say dysplasia? That's a different thing, sorry. Yes, dystocias, like a shoulder dystocia and things like that. Oh, man, and because that I had asked her that was a long time before this, but I remember talking to her about it and her kind of telling me some different things about, and the birth we were going to that day, we had a shoulder dystocia after I had asked her about it. And it was one of those things where I was like, "Oh, Lord, like, I pray that never happens." Like, that's just a lot. Like, that's a lot. And women are strong and they make it through. If the Lord brought that to us, like, we could do it and it would be fine. But that's one thing that in the back of my head, I was like, so when she said a hand, I'm thinking, are we having a hand by our head? Like, or is it, a hand and a shoulder? Like, what is she feeling? 'Cause I'm just thinking about all these ways that, a baby can get hung up when they're sticking their
Yeah,
hands
what's the
places. Yes, exactly. I'm like, "What is going on?" Well, come to find out, the doctor came in, and his whole arm was the presenting part. He stuck his entire arm, Superman style, through my cervix.
so unkind.
I
Wow.
know, what a turkey. Like, his whole arm. She
Wow.
literally she did not laugh. I think I would have struggled. Like, she kinda went, "He's grabbing my finger." Like, that's what she said to me. She goes, "I know." And she was so sweet. Like, looking back, I'm like, "Oh my word, how bizarre." Of course, one more silly thing, but he did, like, he had his whole arm through my cervix and, was grabbing her finger when she was checking me, and I was only dilated to a 5. So, she goes, "This doesn't happen very often, I've done a whole lot of births, and she goes, "This is the 3rd time I've ever had this happen." And the other 2, she had been able to swipe their hand back down. So she tried for a little bit with and I handled it. I didn't, I wasn't freaking out, which was such a
Ouch.
blessing. I know. I was like, with my fun cervix but I was only a 5. She goes, "The ones that I've been able to get his arm back in, like they were like a 10, or really like an 8 or a 9." She couldn't get it to go back in. And I mean, we tried it for a while. And like I said, I trust this doctor and love her so much. And we were good
Mm.
partners in this. And she goes, "I really feel like we need a C-section." And I remember saying to her, well, I remember 2 things. I remember maybe even a day before hearing myself say to somebody, to my mom maybe, or my dad, or just whoever was around, saying something like, "Yeah, I hope that if I have to have a C-section, that it'll just be really obvious and that maybe I won't go all the way through everything and then have to have a C-section." And then later, I'm going, "Why did I say that? That's such a weird thing to come out of my mouth." That was not something that I normally, I'm over here
Mhm.
going, "We're focusing on our goal. Like, this is, we're having this baby as naturally as possible. Like, you're gonna stand up and have a baby. Like, you're gonna do something, who knows?" But I remember having those thoughts beforehand, like, "Huh, that's weird. Why did I say that?" And then what a blessing that the Lord kind of prepared me, you know? It was
Mhm.
like, so then when she said, "We need to have a like, he's not putting his arm back in, it's really that would not, we'd all break or he'd break. Something would happen. That's, we need to have a C-section." And I remember just being okay with it and being at peace. Like, great.
Good.
I'm glad that I'm a 5. I'm glad that we didn't, you know, so it's so hard when you've labored all day and you're at a 10 and then you have to like, because then you're dealing with the difficulties of or recovering kind of from both. And so it was just a gift that it was a weird thing that he did, sticking his entire arm out of my cervix, but it was a gift that it was obvious. And it was a gift
Mm.
that I had a lady doing it that was like, "Listen, like, I will let you try whatever you want. Like, I am not here to tell you what you have to do, but this is, she's," and she was sweet. She wasn't like, "It's an emergency." She goes, "I mean, we need to do this here pretty soon, but you take your time and breathe and, we'll figure this out." And So it was just a gift. But so Ned came on December 3rd, a C-section kind of out of nowhere because he decided to Superman. That was just really funny. So it's my
Goodness.
second C-section after 3
Oh,
VBACs. But, you know, but it's okay. Like I was so grateful that I feel like my heart had been prepared for that and
that's
that I was at
beautiful.
peace with it. Yeah, like what I think sometimes we think like, or I know I do, things didn't go my way and I'm upset about it. And sometimes it's like, yeah, but there are blessings with some of that sometimes. Sometimes it's just hard and that you might not see those blessings for a long time. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's such a gift when you're able to see it and go, okay, like,
Mhm. That's
it is.
beautiful.
And that's in the, we've really feel like that's something that I've over these seasons like that the Lord has just been teaching us a lot. My family
Mhm.
is, you know, you don't always get to know why, but if you get to see a little glimpse of hope or purpose in anything hard, it's such a gift because we're not owed that. Like that's not something, that we always get. And it's hard because we'd love to always have that. But so when it comes, I really am trying my hardest to see those things and hold on to them and kind of accept that blessing instead of just
Mm.
being mad. I get it because there are reasons to be mad. It's hard. But yes, so Ned came and John was there and Betty was there in the hall sending pictures to people. My oldest before I was even out of the OR, she's like, there's a baby and he's here. So it was such a it was really a sweet thing. And, but even with that, Ned, so my last two babies, this is related, recovery went great. Something that I've learned, as a student midwife, that was really important to me is there's a midwife in, I think, Albuquerque, who somewhere in more northern New Mexico, who is trained in, she actually corrects tongue and lip ties and things like this, all that frenulum fun. And I've had several children with ties and in my training as a lactation support educator and then also doing the midwifery training, just plus just being a mom with kids that have had that issue know, like, how important that is for breastfeeding and, like, what making understanding how suction works and latching and why whenever our lips or tongue or cheeks even are tightened down, if it's a lot or a little, how that can affect things in a big way. And that's something I'm really passionate about because it's another one of those things where you feel like this should be common knowledge. It can be
Yes.
such an easy fix. Like, this isn't the kind of thing you go, it'll be okay. It's the thing you just get it fixed and it'll be better. Well, Ned was no exception. He came out like, I literally they pulled him out of my stomach and put him up, and I'm not kidding you, the first thing I said is, "That's a really big lip tie." Like, I'm not kidding because he opened his mouth and, like, cry you know how babies cry, and I
Mhm.
could just see it all the way through his gum, and
Mm.
I went, "Oh my word." And all of the people in the operating room looked at me like I was insane, I think, because that's a weird thing to say when you first have a baby, but I was a little loopy and thrilled and all the things, and so sometimes you say funny things but, my last 2, Gladys and Elsie, I exclusively breastfed them. They did not ever like, I wanted them to take a bottle so, like, I could go on a date, and they refused. Like, they had no they're, like, 8 months old, and I'm like,
Nope.
"I'll pump you some milk." Absolutely not. Like, I had pumps and was like, "Well, that was a waste of my money." Like, I didn't use them at all. But that's how I felt. So with Ned, I had a little bit of supplies, not very much. I'm like, "This is gonna be fine." He has a tongue tie, he has a lip tie. I know immediately. We get it fixed in the hospital. After we get out of the hospital, we go to a pediatric dentist to like double check that they did it thoroughly enough and like let them look at it and fix it. So they kind of um they recorrect it. And Ned is not having it. Like has zero desire to nurse. And
Oh,
so
man.
my 7th baby was my first exclusively pumped baby,
Oh,
which
wow.
mamas that do that, you are amazing, and Oh my gosh, it is so much work. And he wasn't exclusively I did not exclusively pump the entire time. We made it to about 6 months, and I was going crazy.
That's a lot of
And
work.
oh my gosh, it was so much work, and I was just like it was so much work. It was so much work. And, I was shocked. That was, like, the last thing I expected to happen. And, like, we knew all the things, we addressed all the things, and he just was not gonna do it. And I think I will say this as a hope or for moms out there. I should say this so that you don't feel discouraged. It was more of I knew what it would take. I knew that if a mom came to me in my situation and she said, "My number one goal is to nurse this baby. I will do anything." Like, we could get there. I knew the list of things I would tell a mom, like, "This is where we start, and it's gonna be a lot, and we can do it." But I was at a point where, especially with the stress going on that we've already
Mhm.
started talking about, it was not where we were at. I was going, "I'm not doing this." Like, we're good. Like,
Yeah,
I can't, I mean, I could do it, but I didn't want to, and that was okay. It was a big thing to get to a place where I was like, "You know what? I think we're good." And I have,
that's beautiful.
yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we put so much pressure on ourselves of, "This is how it has to be," or, "I've set this expectation in my mind that, like, this is the only way I will do it." And babies and life don't work that way, And
So
sometimes,
true.
like, isn't it? You just go, "Man," like, and yeah, like, it's sometimes you can go, there's a thing I could do, and I could make this happen. I could force it. We could make it happen."
Mm.
But sometimes it's wise, I think, to say, "Is this worth for me at that time, like, is this worth my mental health? Is this worth my relationship with all my kids?" And just my sanity at this point, and, it wasn't, and so I let go, and I actually even funnier, it's the first, I, uh I think we made it to about 6 months, and then he took formula. I will say this side note, little, shout out, what a blessing that there are so many options that way now. There were not when I was first started having babies, everything was just not good, but we were able to find things that were organic and, no weird syrups or preservatives
That's
or,
great.
just things like that, and affordable things that weren't, I wasn't having. I
Mhm.
remember several years ago, I had a friend who, she was, like, ordering from Germany or something. She was having to spend,
Yes.
Yes, yeah, like, I mean, just bukus of money getting stuff here that she could feed her baby, and it's like, feeding babies shouldn't be that difficult, It shouldn't be, and sometimes,
Yep.
we need something else, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal, and so praise God that, in America, you can get things just at Walmart or Target that are not
Yeah,
that, so that was a
that's really
gift as
helpful.
well. Yeah, I mean, we ended up and I mean, and there were options. It wasn't like, "Here's one and you're stuck." There were options, and I remember 2 or 3 babies ago just being curious. I had a sister who was having an issue, and she was asking me about formulas, and I was like, "I don't really even know." At this point,
Yeah,
I had just been like, "Well, it's all horrible." Like, it's at that point, that's kinda where I was,
sure.
and, because and I had no judgment. I My first 2 babies, like, I think I nursed them for, like, 6 weeks, and I was like, "I'm good." Did I mention that it took me a long time to get to where I knew kinda how I wanted to do things? I've done all the things, but it was I didn't I was able to actually whenever she was asking questions, like, it was hard to even research. And that wasn't even that
Mm,
long ago. And now I
yeah.
could look up and there were things to compare and things to look at and things. So praise the Lord, but there were options. And Ned and his persnicketyness didn't, cause the something crazy because we were able to
Right.
feed him and I was able to breathe. And that was a gift. But yeah, so that's Ned. But when Ned was about, let me think, April, he was 5 months old, and you know what? This had a lot to do with the formula decision because that timing adds right up. My husband this is why I stopped, I couldn't do it all, it was too much. My husband had a court date, and it was really bizarre, and they sent my husband to prison, for a crime he did not commit, when Ned was 5 months old. And so we have been
Mm,
without him. I mean, we before I get to, like, it sounding too I mean, it's horrible, but we were able to see him, we're able to talk to him, things like that. So, we're not just completely separated. The first few months we were, and it was really horrible and really difficult and sad and hard and, especially for the kids, because when we left that day, they assumed he would come home, and then he didn't, and then we were able to talk, but we didn't see him for 3 months or something. But that is why I think that was a really big reason why I didn't have somebody cleaning the bottles. I didn't have somebody I was, trying to
that is
pump
such
and
a
keep the
lot.
baby calm and yeah, and so mm,
While you're taking care of 7 children by yourself and your husband
yeah,
in prison?
that's exactly what happened. Yep.
It's wild.
Yeah, that's
How
where
long
we're
was he
at
sentenced
right
for?
now. So, um, I'm like, "Do you want the scary version or the" it's all scary. So he was technically sentenced technically, um, which is a really bizarre long sentence for, just for the technicality of the way it works, to 15 years. But side note, but 8 of that was deferred. It's 7 no, that's not true. 7 was deferred, so it's 8 in. However, with good behavior and things, that translates to, like, 3. So right now, a little over 3, like 3.5. So he is 9 months in, on a unless something crazy happens, which, you know, hold things loosely because obviously crazy things do happen, and can happen. Um, but, most likely, right now, his release date would be I don't know why I said that because 'cause I'm not gonna come up with that math right now, but in about 3 years or a little less. So, but it could there are things that can happen. Something I've learned lots of this is not like I said, this is not something that I knew much about or really cared a lot about,
Well, why would
and
you?
yeah, exactly, like, to learn about the prison system or how things work or what things mean. But now that we have had a crash course, in all things, justice system, it's very interesting. There's always so whenever they sentence you, um, you kinda think that the judge is gonna say 15 years, and then that's what you serve. But actually, it's or in his case, 8 in, 7 out means that he'd be on parole or whatever for, if he did something while he was out, he'd go back in. But he basically whenever the judge says you're going to serve 8 years, uh, with the Department of Corrections, at that point, he hands it over to the Department of Corrections. So then they actually decide things with their policies and their resources, like, just space and stuff like that. They decide how you serve those things. So there's always a possibility of I mean, they could come in tomorrow and say, "You're on house arrest," and send him home, or they could go y I mean, they could do that. Um, they could say, "We are way overcrowded, and so we're just gonna release a whole bunch of people because the governor's about to change." Like, there's just no telling, stuff like that happens, at least here. So that has,
How has his health been
that
in regards to all this? Because, your
yeah,
whole
with all
reason for
that
moving to Oklahoma in the first
because he
place
was
was his
sick.
health.
I
Yeah.
know. He actually is doing well, and I'm so proud of him. Um, I mean, it's still iffy sometimes, but he's having to keep himself, in a eating food is a really big thing. Where he's at a minimum security, place where they have things like they have work, and stuff to do and places to go and not places to go, but there's there's a garden, and there's things like that. So, um, John has been able to in a, work in a garden. So pretty much if he didn't have an outlet like that where he could get food from the ground and substitute some of his stuff, I mean, he'd be eating a lot of bologna and a lot of things like that. I mean, it's really not great what they feed prisoners. And then you also have like there are options where like we can send him money where he can buy things and stuff like that, but it's very expensive and it's still not. It's still a step above bologna maybe. So he and I mean, I say all that to say he has also been very blessed where he is that he's been able to well, things like the garden that sometimes they'll cook stuff. Be like, "Well, we're actually gonna make this pot of whatever out of these vegetables," or things like that. So he's been able to maintain um a decent diet. He's lost a lot of weight and it wasn't like a traumatic. I mean, I think part of it is he's not eating as much because there's not as much that is,
Right.
you know, but that is probably something he needed that has been helpful. And like I said, he's been able to get access to some stuff that's just better for him. So that's a
That's
gift.
good.
But his blood pressure has
How
stayed pretty okay and stuff like that.
good, good. Well, and because I know you and because I know your history with other babies and stuff, I know that in the postpartum, you've struggled some with depression before. I think we talked about that on the other podcast episode. And then it sounds like you have done like beautifully, especially with all these crazy things that have happened. But I mean,
Right.
we get the nitty gritty on here, really, try to be as honest as possible. Like,
Yeah.
how have you handled all those things? Not being able to breastfeed like you had planned,
Mhm.
so pumping, and then your husband
Mhm.
suddenly being sentenced to prison. You are essentially at this moment a single mom of 7. I
Yeah.
mean, I know he's there from afar, but like
Mhm.
that is a whole lot. And your attitude just sounds so amazing. So tell us, like, has there been bouts of depression, and what have you done, that has really helped you through that?
Yeah. I do really well when I'm talking about it. So I think number 1, it's helpful when people wanna talk to you about it. And I know not everyone's like that probably, but for me, it's like, I don't know if people have ever heard I feel like this is a common thing to hear. It's like the idea of, like, preaching the gospel to yourself, like, telling yourself the good news, telling yourself what the Lord has done, and for me, that's been really helpful, reminding myself of the true parts and not just the hard parts. But there are times, I mean, I struggle. I'm on medicine, like, to help with depression, anxiety. It's a lot. I mean, because also I was a student midwife and doing things like that, but I hadn't had, like, a job, and, like, a doula, like, where that's a job. All those are real jobs,
Yeah,
but I hadn't had, like, a 9 to 5, work your booty off in a very structured, clocking kind of a way in 10 years, and even then, it wasn't. And so pretty I just had such a life change overnight, um and it's hard. It's really hard. And I struggle with depression. I struggle really even with hopelessness in a lot of ways. Like I'll be fine a lot of days. I'll be really good. I'll be good for and then something will happen or I'll get tired. I'll get hungry. That's a big one. And I think I've always been a little bit that way. I'll get hungry, but then my husband would go, eat something, you know, eat this. He
just a
that's his
reminder.
job. That's his number 1 job was to keep me fed, and happy. My sweet children, and I never want them to feel like they need to take care of me in any way, but I do have a couple that are a little bit maternal, and, Gladys will, "Mom, I think you need a snack." Like, "Oh, thanks."
Mm,
Um, "You're right, sweet girl, I do." So, also a gift, but so one thing is this is being honest really helps. And that's a struggle sometimes because sometimes you have really dark feelings and thoughts. Not I haven't been suicidal or anything like that. But sometimes when you're in that spot of things are hard, but you're not quite to that level of things, being open can be difficult because you don't want people to assume that you're, struggling in a way that's more intense than you are, but also you need help and it's a So I've tried my best from the get-go, and when I'm in a good place, like, to be honest with my medical professionals or with my church family, with my family before things are hard. So I think that's
Wow.
really helpful. I mean, they're always hard, but before I'm in a puddle on the floor, so they're expecting it. I'm like, hey, I'm struggling. There are days when I think I'm going a little crazy and I may need to holler at somebody for a minute because this is insane, or I'm falling apart and I need help. I would say being a part of a church has been huge, and that has been beautiful. Just even having, you know, there have been so many things, just little things that I feel like, and now this is going wrong, like, with whatever about, trying to pay rent or who knows, this, all kinds of different things go wrong. But being able to have a support system where I say, hey, like, we're losing it and I don't know what I'm going to do. And just having people around that care and
Yeah,
will
that's
pray or
beautiful.
will, um, please go tell them to stop.
Yeah,
Um,
a
sorry.
safe space and people that you trust that you can be really honest with, and you're
Yes.
not the only way you can be fully honest is when you're not fearing judgment from them in that
Oh,
honesty.
yes.
So then you can be
Yes.
real with them about what's going on in your mind.
Yes. And so I really encourage, people when they're struggling, be able to, or, and even now, even if things aren't hard right now, building those relationships are important
Yeah.
because you might be that person for somebody else, but you may also find yourself randomly in a situation no one asked for, no one did anything. Like it just, stuff happens. Like this is not,
Yeah.
and in our time in the prison system, if it's taught us anything, is like my husband's story's not really that uncommon. Like, not that everything is so bizarrely, not, I mean, obviously everything isn't. There's a lot of stuff that happens where people should be there and everything is very straightforward. But there's also a lot of things that are iffy and a lot of things that are, where it's not necessarily that someone is just flagrantly, not caring about other people and breaking the law and all this stuff. Sometimes things are kind of a little more niche, a little more
Mm,
iffy. And
a little more
so,
obscure.
yeah, obscure. There you go. I couldn't think of the right word. But that happens more than you'd think. And so, something else that has been a gift, these people, and I'm throwing this out there also just in case anyone needs an idea about supporting families. And a friend who her husband's actually in the military. And so they did a thing before for military families whenever somebody was deployed where they would be like a family on call. So, like at my church, what they've done is we set up kind of like a meal train or something where they say, this person is bringing a meal this day and this person's bringing a meal this
Mhm.
day. But what it is it's where we've done week chunks and families sign up. And I know that if I need something that week, like these specific people have said, we are your people to call if there's an emergency this week. And it has been such a blessing because
Wow.
one, if I get a flat tire and I have family around, so if I get a flat tire and my dad can't come or whatever, I'm not calling the same person 800 times, to come help. But I can say this person told me that this week, if anything happened, to call them and that they have put that margin in their schedule for me and my family. And so that has just been such a blessing. Um,
Wow, that's beautiful.
so yeah, so I encourage people if you know someone going through something like us, or if you know somebody, or I mean, even if somebody's deployed, or if someone, whatever you're going through, if somebody's going through a hard time, somebody's sick in the hospital for a long time, and say mom has cancer and dad's trying to work and deal with all the things, it's such a gift because there are things like I have some kids with some different needs and different therapies and things like that. And I just can't do it all. There's zero way I could do it all. And depression and anxiety and fatigue are so real. Um, and it's so much like the reality is I can't handle it. I couldn't. Like, there's not a way that I could do all the things by myself, but the Lord has provided, by giving me a support system, and so, I will say this, though, I could go smile and say, "I don't need help, we're fine. I can do it. I'm just gonna muster up the strength and do it all myself," and that would I still couldn't, and I would just be really crazy. Like, I really couldn't do it. So I just encourage people, understanding that we're people and you need help sometimes, and that's okay. And it's good to ask for help when you need it. So then you don't need, you know, things don't aren't as dire, I guess. Asking kind of premeditatively, like getting help set up and asking for help before, not telling people no and that you're fine when you're not fine and you do need help. And
Being
that has been
honest.
a challenge. Yeah, just being honest. And yeah, you do have to pick who you trust. And I'm not definitely not telling everyone that, and even people are people and like they are not going to serve you or uh care about you perfectly. We've had some little bumps in the road where people have been trying to help and it's not helpful or it's hard or um it's stressful, but it's worth those relationships are worth it. And because people care. And I think even if you feel like people don't care, somebody cares. And they really do.
And
Find them
set them up.
because they're there
Yeah,
and
like
help
your
them
network.
care. Yeah. Because if you refuse to let them care, then, you know, you can't
Yeah.
really, that makes it harder.
You
So,
don't
but yeah,
yeah, you
we've
don't
kind
get
of
the
just been through it.
wow. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. You're doing
Yeah.
amazing. I know there's a lot down the road for sure. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing with everybody. Anyway, if anybody listening and they want to help you guys, is there anything they can do and they're not local for you?
Oh, that is so sweet. I don't even know.
We'll share your
That's a
Venmo.
great question.
Like to help in any way like that. And you
Thank
just
you.
felt led. We'll make sure and share that in the show notes. And,
Thank you,
if you
friend.
happen to be in the area that Allie is in Oklahoma, look her up for doula services. Absolutely, she's amazing.
Anytime. Oh, you're so
Yeah.
sweet. Yep. And classes and, whatever. I love it. I love supporting mamas and babies um yeah, but eh, we appreciate you so much, Madon, and getting to tell our story. I'll say one last little tiny thing. When said something earlier about what a gift it is whenever you can see little glimmers of purpose, um, and as things happen or things are hard, um, and we're not owed that, but that whenever we get those, we need to cling to them and cherish them because they're a gift. And through this experience, obviously the hardest one of our lives, my um, we've been able to see. I'm trying to think. I lost it for a second. People who care for us at home, that story and that testimony, obviously, we are believers and religious, and we talk about church a lot. My husband was a pastor and all that. Um, and so he's leading Bible studies in prison and has seen families restored. They pray daily. He leads men in prayer um, for relationships, family relationships to be restored. He's seen people that are big gang members, like high up in different things, turn away from that and come to the Lord or and choose to change. Um, we've seen, but even things like my husband being able to say, "Wow, like I am so great." Tell the men that he's around, "I'm so grateful that my wife was going through this, and this is what our church family is doing, or this is what people at home how they're taking care of her when I can't." And that testimony makes a difference and it goes forward. So when you, I'm not, this is not a like shameless plug to help us or anything, but I'm just saying, like, when you help someone, like, it says something to other people, and it's a beautiful story and a testimony to other people, whether that's a religious thing, whether that's come to Jesus and, go back to church, do the hard thing because, there are people that care about you, even if you've had a bad experience, like that's not the only experience. But also things like even like mental health things, like going, my wife is at home with 7 kids and there are people that care about her to help and so when you help somebody, it tells a story
Mhm.
to other people about getting help or about, being open and honest, and that we're all just people going through hard things, and that, we can do that with purpose, but it's not weak to get help, and it's not weak or, like, unacceptable to just be a person
Mm.
who is going to need help. So, I don't know if that made sense, but, I just encourage everyone that, like, that's been something beautiful that we've seen is that, the families of the men my husband is around every day have been able to hear our story and know that it's good for them to encourage their families back home to get help and to plug in and to have that they don't
That
have to do it
support system
alone.
put in place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
so
beautiful.
important. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
Thank you, Allie. Really
Of
appreciate you
course.
sharing that with everyone. But just be encouraged. Be the support system for whoever's needing it in your area, and be willing to set yours up too. And then when you
Yeah,
have these hard times, really see the strength of that network and that system. So it's so beautiful. Well, I
should be
really
there for
appreciate
one
you coming on the
another.
podcast. Always.
Of course.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for, is to take care of one another, to love
Mhm,
one another and build beautiful
mhm.
relationships. We're intended to live in community with each other. And
Yeah,
that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for
mm.
sharing with us. Really appreciate it.
Anytime, friend, and I hope my kids didn't interrupt too much. I tried.
You did great. Thank you for listening. May you be encouraged and strengthened by what you've heard today. Remember, you are dearly loved by your Creator, so be who He created you to be. May you go in peace, friends. Till next time, Shalom.